What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Tailgate. I am your host, Michael Quattromani. I'm happy to have you here. If you enjoy listening to what I say, then make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. Make sure to also subscribe to my other podcast, The 4-1, where I, along with my two friends, Pat and Neil, talk about football and give our takes on the hottest news in the sport. I will leave a link down below to that channel, which we will actually be posting a video on tomorrow, so make sure to check it out. So let's just get right into it. I was thinking of just starting a new podcast because I love doing the 4-1. It's one of my favorite things that I really do, but I thought that for those of you out there who really like basketball and baseball and heavily are into fantasy football, I thought I gotta make a podcast just dedicated to those people. So this really in itself is a podcast for you guys out there. You know, I want to be able to give you the news and just insight that you guys want, that you guys will be able to benefit from. So that's really why I started the podcast, The Tailgate. I'm really excited to get it started. So anyway, like I said, I'm going to be covering predominantly basketball. That's going to be the sport that I'm going to look at most, but I can't leave out, the Redsox, so I'm going to be talking about them too. And I'm huge into fantasy football, been doing it since 3rd grade. I've gotten a little bit better since then, but I love talking about fantasy football, and I have some pretty hot takes regarding it. So and some of them actually come true. So I like talking about fantasy, and yeah, it's really all you gotta know if you don't know me. Yeah, so I'm just gonna get right into it. So my first topic of the Tailgate is going to revolve around basketball, mainly the Celtics, and I'm sure get to kind of the juicy thing first. Can the Celtics, the Boston Celtics, win the championship? Get banner number 18. My short answer is going to be yes. I think this team is absolutely capable of doing so because, as you guys know, I've been giving my football analysis for almost a year now. We started the 4-1, formerly known as Guys, Thighs, and Ties, back in October of last year. And now that I'm starting something new and looking at other sports, I'm starting to realize how different these sports really are, basketball and football, sorry. And it's not only just because, one is you gotta throw it to one guy and one's in the not you gotta score in the hoop. Not like that. I mean just the personnel on each team and just how each team is built and how, quickly teams can rise in basketball and how quickly teams can fall in basketball, but in football it takes years to rebuild a franchise, So football is all about the team. It's not an individual sport, whereas basketball, you can have individual players lead you to championships. In football, players win MVPs, teams win you Super Bowls. In basketball, it's not a bad bet to pick the team with the better superstar. When in football, a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who's arguably the best running back in the NFL, maybe top 3 offensive player in the NFL, is only going to get the Panthers to a 5-12 record. So just like basketball, teams like the Clippers are led by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and everyone else just seems to be left in the dirt. But this team is potentially going to compete for the championship this year. The sports are it's just really different, and it's the same situation with the Lakers. It's LeBron, Anthony Davis, and company. The Bucks, they have Giannis and kind of Chris Middleton. He's the second guy there, but it's a little bit of a drop off between Giannis to Middleton, and then after them, it's everybody else. And I think what really separates teams like the Bucks separate from the Celtics is just one of these main things is how I think that for the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis is the best overall player. He's the best scorer. He's the best defender. And when there's 5 seconds left of the game, you want the ball in his hands. When you need like a 2 or 3, it's Middleton. But when you want 2, you want it in Giannis's hand. Or when you ever need a quick bucket, Giannis's hands, right? That's just not the case with the Celtics. In my opinion, the best overall player is Kemba Walker. I think he can do the most. But the best scorer is Jason Tatum. I think that when you need a bucket, you go to Tatum. But neither of those guys, in my opinion, is the best facilitator. I think that's Gordon Hayward. I think he can move the ball the best for the offense. But the best defender on the team is none of those 3 guys. I think it's Marcus Smart, who isn't even in the starting lineup. And to address the last second shot argument, I'm comfortable with almost any player in the Celtics starting 5 taking the last shot. If Jaylen Brown were to take it, I'm not mad that Jason Tatum didn't, because I'm comfortable with Jaylen Brown. vice versa. Or you could say the same argument with Kemba Walker or Gordon Hayward. I'm comfortable with either of those players taking the final shot. The only guy I wouldn't is Daniel Tice. And even then, if you need a shot on the post, he's your guy on that team. So with all that being said, here are kind of my just clear thoughts. As of right now, after a nice win against the Trailblazers, the Celtics sit at the 3rd seed in the East and 3.5 games back of the Raptors. But after tonight's loss to the Heat, I think they might be sitting 4 games back to the Raptors, if not 4.5. I think the Raptors might have played today and won. This team did turn some heads when they exceeded expectations this year by showing to be a real contender. After the whole Kyrie Irving incident, I don't want to talk about it. Just his whole saga in a Celtics uniform is just something to forget, in my opinion. Kemba Walker has proven to be a really solid leader when he has been healthy. And I guess kind of a question that I have, kind of like a mini question within the bigger question is, can Kemba Walker does he have what it takes to win a championship? Alone, no, he does not. We've seen that in Charlotte. Kemba Walker is everything you want in a point guard alone, but you need to surround him with pieces, and that's what he has. Alone, he's not, but when he's with guys like Jason Tatum, who was averaging over 30 points per game after the All-Star break, and he's accompanied by Jaylen Brown, who was averaging 20.5 points per game, and Gordon Hayward, who rebounded really well from his last season after, that devastating injury he took 2 years ago, and he's putting up 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. I mean, those are really good numbers for your supporting cast. So Kemba really doesn't have to be the guy. He doesn't have to be the guy that takes all the last shots and the guy that the pressure is all riding on, because there are other pieces on this team that can take the shot. Like I said, I keep on referring back to the shot, but I think that is a really big thing in the playoffs, is you able to have a guy that you can depend on when you need a quick bucket. And I think that's what the Celtics have that most teams don't, is that they have 4 or 5 guys where you can not rely on, but you can really, I guess, depend on to get a bucket when you need it most. So, just, I'm saying a lot of opinions, obviously, so I want to back it up with some stats. The Celtics as a whole score the 11th most points per game in the NBA. They're 9th in rebounds per game. They're 6th in blocks per game, 7th in steals per game. A lot of that comes from Marcus Smart. So obviously this team is a really efficient team, and they're really good on defense. They're also 4th in defensive rating, and they're very efficient, like I said, from the three-point line, as they rank 11th in the NBA. And they are 6th in free throw percentage as a team. Just some quick takeaways. They don't rank outside of 11 in any of them, and they're in the top of the NBA in pretty much every single department. So, honestly, in my opinion, I think they're the most efficient team in the NBA. I think that they really take control of the ball. They make the most out of each possession, and I think that they're going to be a really hard team to beat because they're so much different from everyone else in the NBA. I think this team just has to play to their basketball style in order to win. If they try to conform to what the Bucks are doing or what the Lakers are doing, or I keep on bringing those two teams, but a team like, the Rockets, who are abysmal on defense, but they have a very high-powered offense, led by, obviously, James Harden and Russell Westbrook, who combine for probably 70 points per game. I mean, probably more realistically, probably 60 points per game, but still, that's more than half of the points that team will take just between those two guys. And that is completely different from what the Celtics have. I mean, the Celtics have 3 players this year averaging more than 20 points, which no other team in the NBA can say that they have. So, I think that this team just has the luxury that no other championship contender has. They can bend to however the other team is playing. I don't mean how they can play to the other team's weaknesses, but they can play to where they feel that they're going to succeed the most. And I think that, when when Giannis, if he's having a bad game, which obviously rarely happens, but in the odd, time that he does, there aren't too many players that the Bucks can lean on for points. I mean, you can't tell me right now with full confidence that Chris Middleton's going to put up 30 when Giannis isn't there. It just doesn't happen. I mean, you can't rely on Brook Lopez. Maybe 3 years ago when he was in Brooklyn, or 2 years ago, however many years ago it was, I think it was more than 3 though. But you can't rely on a guy like George Hill. I mean, Eric Bledsoe is alone, like Kemba Walker, he's a very good point guard, but when he's in a system like this, he's just not the same. For the Celtics, if Kemba's playing poor, the Celtics can find other guys to produce points and keep them in it. I mean, we saw this in action for the first game in the bubble when the Celtics faced off against the Bucks. Excuse me. Jason Tatum had 5 points. 5 points. On 2 of 18 shooting, he shot the ball 18 times, and it went through the hoop twice. 2 of 18 shooting. And Kemba Walker... No, I'm sorry. Jason Tatum shot the ball 17 times, not 18. One of the shots that he was counted for was the Bucks actually put it in their own hoop. And the rule in the NBA is that you give it to the opposing player who's closest to the basket. It just so happened to be Tatum, so he was awarded the points. So in reality, he was 1 for 17 with 5 points. Really, 3 points. And Kemba Walker only played 19 minutes. I don't think he stepped on the court in the fourth quarter. And he must not have played a whole lot of the third. And this team still had a one-possession game with less than a minute to go. And Giannis had a good game. He put up 36 and 15 rebounds. And Chris Middleton had 18 points, which is only like 4 points off from what he'll probably normally do. I mean, they adapted to the game. They did what they had to do to be able to scratch and fight their way to keep in it, even with, in my opinion, their top 2 players playing bad. Well, no, Kemba Walker didn't play bad. He actually played really well. He just wasn't on the floor. Celtics just decided to rest him, which I understand. I mean, it's the bubble, and Celtics are kind of locked into where they are, so there's no need in risking arguably your number 1 player on your team to get injured. I get it. If I was Brad Stevens, I'd probably do the same thing. But like I said, with the Bucks, if Giannis is off, it's the same thing with the Lakers. It's the same thing with these superstar-heavy teams, which the NBA is just driven by now, and which could potentially hurt the Celtics. But I think in this sense, in kind of the things that I've been talking about, it helps them out. It gives them an edge when, they need that when another team only has 1 good defender and you have 4 guys who can shoot the ball. It just kind of broadens your horizon. It gives you more opportunities to succeed. I don't think that, and obviously you'd much rather take Kawhi Leonard than Kemba Walker as your number 1 player, but would you take Kawhi Leonard and Paul George over Kemba Walker, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Gordon Hayward? Because that's a question that you have to ask yourself. And personally, I mean, obviously I'm biased, I'm a Celtics fan, but I can't sit here and tell you I'm completely satisfied with 2 guys rather than 4. You know what I mean? So, like I was saying, if LeBron is off, it's just unrealistic to go out and ask Anthony Davis to carry the team, especially against high-powered offenses like the Clippers, like the Thunder, like the Mavericks, and like the Rockets, like I've said. We saw what happened with Anthony Davis back in New Orleans when he was by himself. He had good scorelines, but they didn't win. They didn't win games. They barely made the playoffs some seasons. And then they went in and got DeMarcus Cousins. So you think you pair him up with another, at the time, superstar. No. They were still not bottom, but they were close to the bottom of the NBA at that point. They weren't playing well. They weren't a contender. They weren't competing. So I think it's all about who you're around. And LeBron, we know the LeBron effect. He makes players better, and people are attracted to go to LeBron's teams. And I think Anthony Davis has been wanting to play with them for a while, as that's been revealed in the NBA. And we see that they're now the 1 or 2 seed in the West. I'll actually figure that out right now. Let's see they are. But that's really all I have on the Celtics. I think that this team's just got to play their game. I think they just need to play. I don't think they need to play to what the Bucks are doing. I think they just got to play Celtics basketball. I think if they play Celtics basketball, then we're going to see a lot of short series in the playoffs leading up to that Bucks series. God, I really think it's going to be Celtics Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. So anyway, in the Western, Lakers, top of the West. It goes Lakers, Clippers, Nuggets, Rockets, Jazz, Thunder, Mavericks, Grizzlies. That's your top 8. And for the East, it is Bucks, Raptors, Celtics right behind them. They are 4.5 games back, and with the win from the Heat tonight, they put themselves a game and a half back in the Celtics. So it goes Bucks, Raptors, Celtics, Heat, Pacers, Sixers, Nets, Magic, with the Washington Wizards 7.5 games back on the outside looking in. And for the West, Trailblazers are only 2 games back of the Grizzlies to try to get that 8 seed. So are the Spurs. The Spurs are tied with the Blazers, actually. So I think that's going to wrap it up for me today on the Celtics, but now I'm going to talk about the Red Sox, and this may be a sore subject, so buckle up. Oh, the Red Sox. It seems almost through the first 2 weeks of the season, and this team is already done, right? They're already being scratched off as a team that's not going to be able to make the playoffs, even though 16 teams are going to be able to make the playoffs this year, and that, the season's over, let's just look to next year. But I can't quit on my team like that, so I beg to differ. I think we forgot that even though this team greatly underachieved last year, I'm not going to argue that, they were still the number one offense in the MLB. That's really good. It's number one, obviously. So their pitching was just atrocious, and you can argue that it got even worse this year, and I'm not going to argue against that again. They lost Chris Sale. They lost David Price. They lost Eduardo Rodriguez. I get it. I know. Trust me. I mourned all of that. I get it. But I'm still optimistic. I have to be. I have to be on my Red Sox. Even this season, people are questioning the bats, but this team just hasn't been that bad on offense. They're 12th in runs, 4th in hits, 6th in batting average, 15th in on-base percentage, and they're 14th in slugging percentage. So they're in the top of the MLB, top half of the MLB, in every single statistic, with 4th in hits and 6th in batting average. That's really good. I mean, that's not really good, but it's very solid, you know? So it's right, if you average it out, it's right around the top quarter of the MLB, which even in the regular season still would make the playoffs. So yeah, I kind of foreshadowed it before. Their pitching, I want to get into it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's been bad. They're 24th in ERA, 29th in WHIP, and they're 30th in opponent's batting average. That's dead last. It's not good. I'm not going to sit here and say that it is, but I'm still optimistic. I think this team I think they can potentially make something out of the season. I can't just give up on them yet. I think that the pitching's going to come around once we get to see some of these younger pitchers with just more experience. I mean, on the second, after Eovaldi pitched the first day and they blew out the Orioles 13-2, I can't remember what the guy's name was exactly. He stepped on the mound. I said to myself, who is this? I didn't know who he was. It was the second guy in the rotation. Last year, there was talks about sending Eduardo Rodriguez to like AAA to start out the season because they were so deep at pitcher. I remember 2 years ago, but they were so deep at pitcher, they couldn't hold on to every. Or Stephen Wright. We're gonna start Stephen Wright off in AAA, and he's a starter caliber, starting pitcher. So I just think that it's kind of, just as an outsider, not as Red Sox, I just think it's kind of funny of just how much their, pitching staff is just dropped off in the span of only 2 seasons. I mean, but look, Chris Sale and Eduardo Rodriguez are still on the team. Sale just has to get Tommy John and Eduardo Rodriguez. I can't even say it. Eduardo Rodriguez, there you go, is having heart issues due to COVID-19. But next year, your top 3 is going to be Chris Sale, Eduardo Rodriguez, there we go, and Nathan Eovaldi, who's looked really good this year so far. So that's not too bad. Obviously, this season, Eovaldi's your ace, which is not what you want. But next year, when things start getting together, I think we might be seeing a different start to the season. But anyway, I want to talk about this year because, like I said before, the season's not over yet. I do want to point out one more thing. Our best batter right now, statistically, is Christian Vasquez. Christian Vasquez is not the best batter on this team. He's not even top 3. So once Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts, JD Martinez, Michael Chavis, and Andrew Benintendi start to actually play some baseball and not just, apparently just play blindfolded, I think we're going to see a lot of the pressure start to be relieved from this pitching department. I talked about it in the 4-1, probably, I brought it up a few times, but a few weeks ago, how Jameis Winston not only hurt, the Buccaneers as a whole, but he really hurt the defense by throwing 30 picks, which just led the league in that department. Because when you think about it, let's say he's at his own 40-yard line and he throws an interception, and the defense takes the ball to the 50, okay? So the opposing offense is setting up shop at the 50-yard line. The defense, already winded because they were just on the field, has to now get back on, short-fielded, and has to somehow prevent points. Because the Bucs didn't allow a lot of yards. They allowed a lot of points. And their passing defense wasn't good, but it's because the cornerbacks were stuck chasing receivers the entire time. That's why the defense got so, tired and just couldn't perform to the best of their ability. That's why the Bucs lost a lot of games late, because the defense was just tired. They couldn't keep up with some of these other offenses. So I think it's going to be kind of like the same thing with the Red Sox. I think that once, the batters start, giving the pitching staff some leads, like Red Sox leading 7-2, and the pitchers aren't like, okay, we have to now pitch completely perfect. Like, no, you have a 5-run cushion, and for these young guys who, as we know, rookies have stress and they have pressure, and sometimes they can't deal with all of it being in the big leagues now. Maybe this will be able to kind of help their mental state, which, as we know in baseball, is so huge. And in some sense, mental is more important than the actual physical aspects that pitchers have. And we saw pitchers just completely fall off the face of the earth because they might not be in the right headspace. So, just for reference, back to the batting, Benintendi is batting 83, .083 right now. I'm just gonna let that settle. JD Martinez, 3-time Silver Slugger and 3-time All-Star, has 0 home runs and is batting .219. Again, I'm just going to let that settle. I promise neither of them are going to keep this up this season. But just give this team some time, and they're going to pick things up. Things are going to turn around for this team. I think they're sitting at 3-7 right now. When I was going into the season, I was not thinking the Red Sox was going to be a 3-7 baseball team, because they're not. The Red Sox are not a 3-7 baseball team. The Red Sox, in reality, in a 60-game season, are probably going to be right around 33-27. But in a 16-team playoff, I think that makes the playoffs. So I think this team has just got to be 500 and a little bit better than 500, and they can. They're more than capable of doing that. Just get the bats going, which is gonna happen with time. I mean, this is an adjustment for everybody. The Orioles are like 5-3 right now or something. The Orioles are not a 5-3 baseball team, just like the Red Sox aren't a 4-4 baseball team, and just like the Astros aren't a 5-4 baseball team. They're a lot better than that, but some teams just need to adjust. I think the Red Sox are just part of that adjustment phase right now. It just happens to be early in the season. So that's kind of where I'm going to wrap things up. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the team's going to win the World Series, because they're not, right? And they may not even be a contender in the playoffs. I'm just saying that don't count this team out this early, because there's a lot of baseball to play, and we have a lot to kind of see from this team. So that's going to wrap things up. Like I said, I'm going to do a 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning we did on the 4-on-1 for a very long time, mostly in this basement. This I like to call it as the old studio. Now we have the new studio, which happens to be 500 feet away in my shed. But yes, we did the 2-minute warning. I want to bring it here because we don't do it on there anymore. So I want to bring it to the tailgate. So obviously start off the podcast giving you guys my 2 cents and just the reason why I started the podcast itself, and then jump right in, talked about the Celtics, how I personally think that they are a real contender to win the championship this year, and I think you are crazy if you can just count this team out, because they're playing a different type of basketball, and I'm really liking it, and I'm happy, to be able to watch this team right about now. And then talked about the Red Sox. Don't give up yet. That's my only thing. If you're going to take away anything from this podcast, please just don't give up yet. I think that it's going to be a fun season. I think things are going to turn around quickly. So I think it's going to be it for this edition of The Tailgate. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to this episode, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good one. I think I was born inside a cabana with diamonds and gold on top of the phantom.